That's right. And then really the same is true at 46. It still remains broad.
Yeah, it's all,
beam,
yeah.
ba-bum, bum, ba-bum, beam, ba-bum, all the way through
Yeah,
that.
the dots are gone, yeah.
They are. And then at 40, at measure 50, when it begins this horn entrance, as you alluded to earlier, that's really challenging for the horn player to come in on the end of one there, and the flute player never wants to feel secure coming in the end of three. So from a conducting standpoint, I think it's really important that A, you sort of drill that, you make sure that everybody's completely comfortable with that, and B, that you're really clear from a conducting standpoint to make sure that beat 1 and beat 3 are really well known to both the horn player and the flute player, because that's a mess sometimes.
And I didn't cue it. Maybe
Right.
maybe if I had written this piece now, knowing what I know, I might have cued that in the first trumpet, because that's pretty, that's pretty easy range for the first trumpet, just as a backup. So if you don't happen to have a horn player,
That can,
or don't happen to have a horn player who can play really well with a mute, you might consider
substituting
substituting in the first.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then as we progress now to 55, I think very similar to that other big block section before, which is one of the challenges now, really listening and balancing this horizontal tritone, this vertical rather, tritone sounds that again don't necessarily fall easily in our ears, particularly with band music.
Yep.
This is very unique. And then what have you found at 59 as we get into this chamber music section?
Well, because it's soloists, suddenly there's personal responsibility that plays a factor in this section, rather than you can sit back and be a member of the group. Now there are these individuals who have to carry the ball. And I think that's a good thing, of course.
Absolutely.
But that's the challenge in this section, is confidence and soloistic playing and a kind of chamber-like environment that you're trying to create as well. All of those factors come to play here.
And I find that when I've done it before, in this environment, when there's only 4 people playing, it's incredibly important that they all articulate the same way, that they're all speaking the same language. And so one of the things that I've done is just said, okay, all of you play this together. Let's just play it all together and figure out where those articulations are and where the accents are, and listen to one another play it so that we can match exactly one another's style. And that seems to be successful. And then they're able to go off on their own and play it in, as I say, chasing each other.
I think that's a very good way to do this, because it reinforces the fact that they're playing the same music, just at different times. I would also include the trumpet solo in that, even though the trumpet is not playing the theme, the trumpet also still has to match the style of these other 4 soloists.
That's right. And then when we get to 66, there are any number of performances that I've heard too where the slurs are ignored, because we're used to seeing bump, 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 and now all of a sudden they're more legato. And I think, you don't even have in the 8th notes dots marked. So now you're broadening everything, and that's something that I think many people miss in this.
Yep. It's also a little bit tricky balance-wise. So you want to try to balance vertically and also balance, have this sense that it's not just da-da-da, da-da-da, because only the first clarinet's playing on the upbeat, whereas da-da-da. And so the first clarinet has to make sure that they're playing with confidence, so you actually hear some sense of reciprocal balance happening between the lower clarinets and this first clarinet, and then getting help from the bassoon later.
And so then we get to 69, these two whole notes in the clarinets and the tuba. And one of the other things that I found that happens quite regularly is they all want to take a big, huge breath going into 71. And that just, to me, musically, that disrupts everything. And so I think it's important when you're rehearsing that to make sure that all of those folks know there's no breath in there between 71. They got to sneak it somewhere else.
I agree with you. I like for it to go right into 71. Then the clarinet players can catch a breath at one of their 8th rests, 71, 72, somewhere in there.
Absolutely. And then we get, of course, to 71, which is now the legato theme. And this is a really nice contrast to what we've had before. And one of the things that I found is some of the performances that I've heard make this too legato. and we don't get the real definition of the articulation. So for me, I think beat 2 of 72, beat 2 of 73, and beat 1 of 74 deserve just a little bit more articulation and a little more emphasis on that note, so that we understand where the slurs and the tongues are.
Yeah, I'm all for that, because they're answering the bass line. The bass line's on the downbeat, and then they answer that on beat 2, and so you can do a little bit to that. 1, pa-da-da, pa-da-da, just a little bit. I wouldn't want a hard tongue, but just a tenuto, a little tiny hint of a tenuto, I think is a good thing, because it enhances that sense of dialogue between the lyrical theme and the bass line.
Yeah, and in rehearsal, I often refer to that as an emphasis. Emphasize that note a little bit more, because of course the moment you say, I want you to either put an accent or something on there, then you're going to get the wrong sound. But certainly it just has to have that bit more of emphasis to it. And then we move to 73 now, or 83 rather, and we have 2 markings that help to get us a little more oriented in 83 with the trombones, euphonium, and really the toms. You say crisp and distinct. And there's dots over those, so you want those short. But yet we don't have real accents yet, correct? We're going to build our way into that. Right,
we don't. However, when I conduct this, I often will put an accent on the last note of 84 in the trombones and euphoniums, because that note will get lost if they don't do something. Yeah, dum ba dum, bum bum ba dum. Just a little bit of an accent there on those upbeats. And it's all about here contrast. The reason I mark crisp and distinct is I'm trying to heighten the contrast between the main theme material, which is coming back here in the trombones, and the more lyrical theme that is now in the trumpet, the first trumpet here.
Exactly. And then we get to 86 and 87, and we have these really aggressive accents. And one of the house-top accents, absolutely. And for me, I think that gets very confused sometimes for short, and we get too short, and they're strong accented notes, but with some length, so that we really hear the pitches themselves.
It's marcato. It's marked. It's slightly hammered, but it doesn't. In fact, you can't get that marcato quality if you play it too short.
Right.
Exactly. Pa, pa. And really, before the trombones do it, the low brass, the first trumpet sets the mood there. Da da pop pop, and I never get enough crescendo from the trumpets right there.
That's right.
Dee da pop pop. They have to do that.
And we're talking about measure 86.
Yes, measure 86. The first trumpet starts this whole game.
And then this is where we start building and heading our way with towards 96, which is of course the inversion of the legato theme. And for me, I want to sort of emphasize that more, because I want people to hear be-da-dum, da-dum. I want that contrast. So you say bring out, and that's absolutely right. The number of performances where the trumpets are still crisp and distinct and the low brass are playing so strong that you can't quite hear that. I think that gives you a clue. So when you say bring out, you want that to be really on top of the sound.
Yes, we're still in this section where the second theme has the spotlight, but all these other forces are starting to impose themselves on it, and so they have to try even harder to keep themselves in the foreground. And so I mentioned it even earlier at 92 in the low clarinets. They've got to bring it out there. And then, of course, the flutes at 96 have to bring it out.
And I think one of the culprits at 96 could be, and often is, the low brass. They're coming from an accented environment, and then we get to 96 and there's no longer accents. And I think they sometimes tend to play those a little bit too harsh, backing down and just providing that harmony, allowing the other legato theme and then the crisp trumpet theme to come out, and the horns is great. The other thing that I like, that I always have to encourage more of at 96 is the percussion. It feels like I always need to encourage the tom-tom player to really go to town there and play a little bit stronger than they normally do for some reason.
Yes, it makes its entrance there, and it's foreshadowing that compressed material at 108 with this ba-ga-dum, bum, ba-dum, ba-ga-dum, bum, bum, ba-dum, ba-ga-dum, bum. That the 16th thing is foreshadowing this ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum. So yes, it's important here.
Absolutely.